Reed Slatkin was among the most prestigious of Hollywood Scientologists. Using his position as a Scientology minister, he made all the right connections. He managed to raise close to $600 million from the wealthiest investors in Hollywood. The who's who of the 90s threw a ton of money at him, such as Joe Pantoliano, Greta Van Susteren, and Giovanni Ribisi all fell victim to one of the largest Ponzi schemes in U.S. history. Slatkin was born in Detroit in 1949, and he didn't have the best childhood. At 16 years old, he walked into the garage to find his father had taken his own life. Slatkin was lost and in desperate need of direction. Luckily, his uncle swooped in and introduced him to Scientology, and it was exactly what Slatkin was looking for. In Scientology, he found structure, and he clung to it. He even got the chance to study directly under L. Ron Hubbard, founder of the religion. At 24 years old, Slatkin became a minister and began training others at the church's celebrity center. Things seemed to be going well for the young minister. He was all about Scientology and believed in its message. However, his job didn't exactly pay the bills, and as a young man with a new family, money was his primary concern. A mentor in the Scientology community taught him about stocks and investing, which got him thinking that this was the best way to make it big. In 1984, with that in mind, Slatkin packed up his family and headed out to the Golden Coast, California, looking for golden opportunity. His first step was to set up an investment office in the garage of his new home. Once established, he was ready to dive in head first. He dubbed his unlicensed investment company the Investment Club. It would operate by making investments on behalf of Slatkin's clients. Being new meant he didn't have any weight to his name to pull big fish investors. So he started fishing in his circle, investing for his gullible Scientologist friends. Slatkin's friends thought he was better than a bank. In their minds, there was no way their friend would rip them off. They felt secure. This was the line of thinking that Daniel Seda, former associate of Slatkin, fell prey to. Daniel is a Scientologist that worked in Los Angeles restoring antique art and furniture. When he heard about Slatkin from his other friends, he thought he'd found a shortcut into the good life. He felt like he had finally found someone who could help him achieve his dreams. He refinanced his home and gave his entire life savings to Slatkin, almost $400,000. His Scientology friends allowed Slatkin to play with millions, but he wanted more. While his position in Scientology was enough to get the lower-level investors on his side, Slatkin was going to need something special to get celebrities and high-ranking officials to invest with him. He needed something big, and that's when Kevin O'Donnell showed up with a $20 million investment. Slatkin had his whale bait. Impressed with the entrepreneurial spirit of Slatkin's garage setup, O'Donnell invited Slatkin to be a part of a new startup called EarthLink. O'Donnell wanted Slatkin to invest and help the company's finances. Slatkin agreed and invested $75,000. 3 years later, the company went public, and Slatkin saw a return of $100 million. But this wasn't his most significant victory with EarthLink. EarthLink today actually still is an internet service provider. If you don't know, back in the late 90s, EarthLink was a company that was in direct competition with America Online. EarthLink gave Slatkin access and credibility to investors that he would have otherwise never met. With his big win in EarthLink, top of his claims of managing over $25 million, Slatkin began attracting some of the most influential people in Hollywood. His victims included famous actors and TV personalities such as Giovanni Ribisi, Ann Archer, Greta Van Susteren, and Joe Pantoliano, Art Linson, and Armin Bernstein. Some of these people were high-ranking Scientologists, and it seems as if Slatkin was taking on everyone he could find to increase his wealth. Handling all of that money seemed to challenge Slatkin as he developed a taste for the finer things in life. He had no problem taking other people's money and spending it himself. In 1993, he moved his family out to Hope Ranch, exclusive community in Santa Barbara, California. He collected high-priced art as a hobby, but this wasn't the only thing he dropped stacks of investor cash on. He was knocking on the 1%'s door. He began to play the part. Slatkin joined multiple prestigious country clubs over the years, paying the dues with his stolen money. He also did away with his old vehicle and purchased luxury cars to ride around in style. He even dared to donate money that wasn't his to charities and reaped the social benefits for himself. Slatkin's reputation and status grew exponentially through this period of his life. Everyone looked at him like a philanthropist due to his donations to the church and charities. No one knew the schemer that lurked under his facade. But it was only a matter of time before his mask fell away. With all the drastic changes to his life, Reed Slatkin was still running a Ponzi scheme. He offered clients a guaranteed 24% annual profit on their investments. He told his investors that he was doing this by making smart stock trades and getting in on the ground floor of promising startups. However, none of this was true. What he was doing was keeping a steady stream of new investors coming in and using their money to pay off old investors. Slatkin portrayed himself as an investor with tons of experience and a technical analysis genius. But with the investments he actually made, he sank most of his clients' money into underperforming real estate and tech startups that went nowhere. In 1992, Slatkin landed one of his most influential clients when he got film producer Jay Sedrish to invest. Sedrish had a lot of success in the film industry with outstanding credits such as The Matrix Reloaded, Edward Scissorhands, and Ghoulies. According to his IMDb page, Sedrish worked as a production accountant or consultant on these films. And his other credits include work as a financial representative and executive producer. In an interview, Sedrish said he finally had a little bit of money for the first time in his life and was looking for some place to put it where it could grow. Slatkin sounded like the right place, and quarterly statements showing steady growth put Sedrish's mind at ease. Of course, he had no idea he was being played. A refusal to register as an investment advisor started the downward spiral that ended Slatkin's career. But how did it all go down? In November 1999, the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission opened up an investigation into his investment club. Now that his name was becoming more known, the SEC got wind of him and thought it peculiar that he was an unregistered investment advisor. In the United States, any person or company investing money on behalf of others must register with either the state or the SEC to ensure that everything is a legal and safe practice. If you're working with under $100 million, you register with the state. Over that, it's with the SEC. When the SEC regulators questioned Slatkin about the business practices, his only option was to throw them off his scent. He made it seem as though he was retiring, telling regulators that he would liquidate all of his accounts. He sent out letters to his investors and even provided fake liquidation statements to the SEC. This was all just another misdirection by Slatkin as he took in more money. Even under investigation, he was able to get over $100 million in new investments. One of these investors was a man named John Poitras. He would prove to be too big of a catch who was able to finally capsize Slatkin's sinking ship. Slatkin had talked Poitras out of $15 million, but the retired venture capitalist wanted out just a few weeks later. Poitras called and called, but Slatkin's always had an excuse for not returning his money. At this point, he was getting calls from many investors that wanted out and had no idea what to do. In a last-ditch effort to hold everyone off, he invented a story about a Switzerland brokerage firm called NAA Financial, where this imaginary brokerage was holding $500 million of his money. He went to great lengths with investors to prove his story. Slatkin once again created fake documents, fake business partners. His attention to detail was so precise, he even made sure to have a European ringtone for his fake company. But the lie proved too big to sell, and the plan fell apart under scrutiny. There was no stopping the ball now that it was rolling downhill. John Poitras dealt with excuses and empty promises for 6 weeks before becoming fed up, contacting his lawyer. His lawyer filed a civil lawsuit and got a judge to agree to freeze all of Slatkin's assets. Without access to his resources, his Ponzi scheme crumbled to nothing. Without any other option, on May 1st, 2001, Slatkin filed for bankruptcy. His troubles were obviously far from over when the SEC sued him for violating federal security laws 10 days later. The ball was rolling faster and faster as all of Slatkin's choices caught up with him. He stepped down from his position at EarthLink. The FBI and IRS raided his offices and collected enough evidence to bury him in. But what wasn't there was equally important. There's no paper trail to prove any of his investments he claimed to be making. The only ones he made were terrible and fell through. Most schemes like this blow up like a firework only to dissipate after a moment. Somehow, Slatkin was able to keep his con going for 15 years. Like all others, it eventually crumbled. During his scheme, he collected $600 million from his victims. $200 million is lost forever. Slatkin, ever ready to use someone else to solve his problems, tried to blame the Church of Scientology for his scheme. He told the court that he was afraid to shut the operation down because of the reaction he would have gotten from the church. With so many of the former pastor's friends in Scientology involved, it's easy to see why he would be worried. In 2003, Reed Slatkin pled guilty to wire fraud, mail fraud, obstruction of justice, and money laundering. The judge sentenced him to 14 years in prison for his crimes and ordered him to pay back $240 million in restitution. This sentence also meant that anyone who profited from his scheme had to pay back what they gained. For example, Greta Van Susteren and her husband agreed to pay back $700,000 worth of profits made from Slatkin's scheme. In total, they had netted $939,000. The church publicly condemned Slatkin for his actions. They stated that he violated their code of ethics and the church cut all ties with him, expelling Slatkin from the organization. For years, reports from other Scientologists on Slatkin's character were ignored. The church fought with everything it had to avoid giving back the money they got from Slatkin and eventually settled on $3 million. Slatkin served 10 years before being released from prison. He spent the next 2 years with his family before dying of a heart attack in 2015. Click here to watch one of these next videos.